Hola, everyone. Carly, you are included in everyone. Happy to
Hola.
have you all back. Happy to have you back, Carly, after a Costa Rica retreat.
Yeah.
It's been a busy month for us both, I think. A lot going on.
Yeah.
How you feeling? How are things?
Um, I don't even know.
I think that says it all right there.
No. That pretty much sums it up. Well, I was trying to think earlier. I was like, when was the last time we even did this? Because it feels like an eternity. So I'm like, what's been going on? Like everything and nothing all at the same time.
Mm,
Yeah. So I don't even know where to start. But I do know that things are coming up, man. I know where to start. So, when we were in
yeah.
Costa Rica, the first thing the guides were saying the first night, and, mind you, at this point, I'd been up for like 2 days because there were all these like weird challenges with the flight and like, it's a whole
Oh,
story,
man.
but I guess we could tell the story. But anyway, the guides were talking about like the theme of this retreat was the reclamation of form. And I was so tired from being up for so long, and you're in the energy in the room that I didn't think anything of it. And like throughout the week, like they really worked on the reclamation of form,
Mm,
and it took me until like 2 weeks after I got back from the retreat to even realize like, oh, when they were talking about the reclamation of form, that means like my body, and that means like the lower three centers. And because I started to notice in working with clients and my own stuff that was coming up, like all of this energy work around the lower three centers. And actually, it's kind of surprising. It took me 2 weeks to realize it, but yeah. So like that's what's going on, right? Like the reclamation of form, and it is super fucking uncomfortable.
mm.
Like,
So let's explore that. What has that been meaning for you? What is your interpretation of that? Maybe what has come up around that?
yeah, that's a lot of questions. But so of
Do
the
them all
idea
right
of
now.
yeah,
One
right
word
now, like
answer
this
for
instant.
everything. If you were to all summarize everything into one word.
Into just like one easy to digest. You could even have like a whole sentence. All right, so what does that meant? I think it could mean, I don't know, different things to different people, but to me what that is looking like is it's looking like all of the areas that have to do with emotions and physical components and mental components of, for me, what it means to be in a body. Any of that that's been held in shame or guilt or embarrassment or any kind of darkness or fear or separation is very vividly coming up in very like visceral ways to be acknowledged, to be dealt with, and to be let go. So,
Mm,
so what that's kind of looked like, and I guess we're gonna go really personal because this is really personal.
it's up to you.
Well, before I guess I go there, I've been finding it really interesting, like when I'm working with clients, seeing a lot of energetic imbalances at the base, the sacral, and the solar plexus. So maybe that'd be a good place to start, right? So, when you look at an imbalance in the root chakra, what is that really about, right? Like that's really about like your safety. That's about feeling like you're supported and protected and that your basic needs, like if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you're like looking at those like lower basic needs. And so when our ideas of what it means to be safe or supported or whatever start to get challenged with this new way of thinking, it can like throw the energy off there. Think of it like an earthquake, right? Like depending on like what
Yeah.
the earthquake is, like stuff starts to rattle on the walls and sometimes the dishes fall down and we're breaking stuff, and that's kind of what it feels like to people. And so people's ideas of like job and family and relationship, moving up into the sacral, like that is being challenged. People's ideas of will and power and willpower and motivating forces, like all of that's being challenged. So I think in general people are seeing a lot of different funky things when they're thinking about like themselves being in a body. Like, what does it feel like to be in my body? What does it feel like to have a body and walk through this world? What does it feel like, my relationship with other people? What's my relationship with the things that are happening in my life? What's, am I coming from the ego or am I coming from my higher self? Do I feel supported? How's my bony structure in my body? So, it's amazing how many people's knees are hurting right now. Like, wow, that's wild. Like more so than normal. So I think that's kind of, I don't know, a little like glazing over of kind of what's coming up. But with that is coming up a lot of the deep, dark things that we don't like to look at, And so we really are diving into shame, and we're diving into embarrassment, and we're diving into guilt, and a lot of these like societally conditioned ways of being in fear and separation in the world. And we're basically like, digging deep into the cave and like shining the flashlight around like, okay, what are all the creepy crawlies in here? And it's just like the space and time for that to come up. And so, it's causing people to look at everything. Like, look at the idea of system itself. Like I always thought, every time I go to one of these things, some system that I've held in fear or separation comes up for me to be renowned. Great. And then I realized like, oh shit, it's not just like a system. It's like the whole idea of system itself, and it's like literally every system all at the same time. So it's like, I found myself for a few days like, oh my, am I having like an existential crisis? Like what is happening? Like, I wound up like cutting all my hair off and dyeing it platinum blonde, which is a pretty normal response to something like that. Thanks. Yeah, I like it. But, I definitely was like really questioning like, who the fuck am I? What's going on? Oh my God. Like, I don't know what to do with all this. And I don't think I've been alone in that, which is why I'm talking about it.
No,
so,
you're not, and that was all very well put. It's interesting. So, do you want to talk about maybe some of the common things you've seen come up around these chakras? Some of the problems, some of the you've touched on it. At a broader level. It could be you, it could be other people, just in general. Obviously, don't have to divulge anything about clients, but I know there's a lot of trends you see, and we see just talking to friends, talking to people who are a part of this work.
Yeah, I think I'll talk about two different components of this because I think they're both really important. And the first one is people are noticing a lot of static in their relationships with other people. So a lot of like partnerships and ideas of partnership are coming into question for people. Like, what does it mean to be in a relationship? What does it mean to be in a monogamous relationship? Like, why did we agree to this? Do we continue this relationship from a place of love or from a place of duty and obligation? Like, are we truly choosing from a space that is to our highest and best, or are we choosing out of habit? And, a lot of people are finding that, actually, there are large components of this relationship that have been agreed to in fear, and oh shit, that's actually not working. And so people are finding themselves like navigating and questioning and renegotiating what it means to be in relationship. And that's hard.
Yeah.
That's really sticky energy. And so I'm finding a lot of that. And, it's interesting because we find that actually like all through people's centers, like when people are having challenges in their relationships. And, like I know energetically, like obviously there are things, happening kind of universally, but even on like an evergreen kind of scale, like no matter when you hear this podcast, I don't know when we're putting it out, but of course there are universal kind of factors. And when it all comes down to it, I feel like really like what we're addressing is this idea of war and peace, which, with all the stuff going on in the world, that's been a topic that's been on people's minds. But, when you have agreements in your relationship that are based on fear, that's like the same thing as war, right? It's just like a different degree of it and a different scale. It's like a very personal, close scale. And so I think that part of the reason why this is coming up for people in this very close scale is because as we address these things in our own personal lives, it allows us individually and collectively to address it on the larger scale. And so I think that, I'm always fascinated by the trends that we are seeing with people. because it does happen to be, seems to be pretty universal. Like no matter who I talk to, yep, we're having that
Yeah.
same experience. So, I feel like it's really been a request to look at everything through eyes of love and compassion and hold everything as gently as possible to allow the yucky stuff to come up. Because, people who are asking these tough questions in their relationships right now, what they're finding is, as they can hold this and address this from a space of love, that they can either choose to continue in their partnership from this like elevated energetic level, or they can choose to separate paths also from a place of love with an appreciation and a re-knowing of what it means to be in love and in partnership. So
Yeah.
that's one way.
Can I
And then
touch on
like,
that real quick?
yeah.
So I had just heard something on a podcast recently, and I've found a similar trend among our friends and just people in general that I know. This idea of relationship coming up a lot and how we relate to one another, and really getting down to the basics of it for everyone, for us, because that's what we have to do. We have to figure out what are the basics of this thing before we say if we want to some way change it or re-understand it or reimagine it or re-see it. And I was listening to this podcast, and I'm not a astrology person. I really don't know anything about it, and it's never been something that called to me. But they were talking about the astrology of like the eras, and he was talking about, it was on Aubrey Marcus's podcast, and he was talking about how we are moving from the era of Pisces, which is the two fish, which is all about like a two relationship, like learning about the one through the two, and we're moving into Aquarius, which is all about like a group and hive, like community relationship. And I just thought it was funny because that it was a topic of conversation I've had with so many different people at this point,
Yeah.
and in different ways. Some like, who had more like not super unique, but different ideas about relationship, deciding, oh no, I want to get married. This is like how I want my relationship to go. And like, I've found my person, this is going to be right for me. And then some people who've done the opposite, where it's been like, oh, I thought, I wanted marriage, this, that, or or this was my person forever or whatever. And then negotiating with themselves, well, what does it mean to be in a relationship? What does it mean to
Right.
agree to these structures around a relationship and a future? And so it's been interesting, just a kind of full spectrum interrogation of this idea of how we relate to each other as people, as humans.
Yeah. It's funny. I watched the first like 2 hours of that podcast, and then it was like so late at night I had to go to sleep. But I was waiting because somebody else recommended it to me because it was a topic we were talking about. And they were like, you'll be interested in the part about relationships because that's like, the questions you're asking. That must have been in the last 45 minutes. But no, so yeah, like back to the thing about the moving from the Piscean age into the Aquarian age. I think that kind of started like during the harmonic convergence, which I think I was a baby and I don't think you were born yet. But it's it's been like it's definitely been like a work in progress. And I know that like as my teacher Diane has always taught, it's also about the living from the level of the personality body or duality, lifting that sense of separation, returning to oneness, which is really like when you look at the work that we're doing as we're investigating the slimy things under the rocks, that is about lifting the ideas, the sense of separation, the things we hold in fear and distortion, and lifting that back to the space of oneness, the space of love. So same way of saying lifting that into the Aquarian age. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to watch the rest of that.
What was the second? What was the second point you had for us?
Oh, okay. So another thing that people are finding a lot of is, and we really kind of touched on this at the very beginning, is what it is to be in the body And so like the ideas around like governance of the physical and emotional and mental bodies themselves. And so I think what people are finding with that is, well, from the level of the personality body, like really having kind of some sharp contrast when people find themselves operating from the space of ego or the small self or the personality body. It's becoming more and more apparent, and it's becoming more uncomfortable as it's becoming more apparent for people. And it's, it's kind of like saying, I'm here and I'm so obnoxious, you have no choice but to look at me. And I think that, what I'm finding is with folks who I'm working with who have maybe a practice of really kind of looking at the shadow, maybe it's not as contrasting as folks who have maybe either spent their lifetimes kind of glossing or glazing over it, or have felt the need to kind of push it down. Like there was somebody I was working with today. We were talking about the topic of anger. And this has actually been coming up a lot this week, now that I think about it. Topics of like anger and arguing with people where it just wasn't done where they grew up. And so they never really learned a super productive way to move through the anger. And so what they find is they find that it's actually having not just energetic, but physical effects on their bodies because, anger is part of the spectrum of human emotions. And we're here to have these human experiences. And a lot of people in the spiritual community, and I have definitely been guilty of this too, underplay the importance of the role of the actual physical body. Like there really needs to be a balance between what's the physical body doing and what's the energetic body doing, and so that they're doing whatever they're doing in harmony of union. And I know for me personally, that's really been missing, especially after, I've been having some of these realizations, and maybe I should offer a trigger warning on this before I say it. I don't know. So, I realized, when I was either 17 or 18, and long story short, I was sexually assaulted, but I wasn't like, this is not even like fully raped, right? And so I really kind of like wrote that experience off, and I kind of shoved it down and didn't really process it. And that's one of the things that's coming back up. And I realized like, holy shit, like you really like shove that down deep into the depths, because honestly, I had even forgotten that it happened until some of this other stuff started coming up. And I know that we've talked about it before, but I also had a history of abusive relationships. And, there was domestic abuse like time after time after time. And so with that, what I realized is that, because the guides have been working with opening our senses, and one of my predominant clairs is clairsentience or feeling, I'm feeling a lot more in my lower three centers than I have probably most of this lifetime, like more than I have it. Because I realized it was like the day after I got home from Costa Rica, and I'm just like standing in front of my dresser. I get this like flood of energy in my solar plexus, my sacral, and my root center. And I was like, holy shit, this is what it's like to actually be in your body. And, even the times that I felt like, because last year I felt like I really kind of re-entered my body, but even that was nothing compared to what I was able to feel in those lower centers. And I was like, oh my God, like I have been shutting this physical aspect of myself down for like, what is that? I don't know. How old am I? More than like 20 years, right? Like, oh my God, more than like half of my life, I've shut this down. And, nobody likes to look at these things of these, traumas or experiences that are, whatever you want to call it, that happen. But things like that are coming up for people. And I know for me, like, as I'm kind of navigating this, I've been really interested in how I'm navigating it, because that feels differently than I would have otherwise too. Like it's far less, I don't know, it's been emotional. Like there's been like tears and anger and, like the whole like spectrum of emotions that come along with it. But it feels like the energy around it is also moving really, really quickly. And I'm really grateful for that. And I can see each of the things that happened in my life, how they led to shame or how they led to, whatever the distortion was. And as it comes up, I'm just kind of looking at it and saying, oh, there you are. Thank you so much. You kept me safe. This was an idea I thought that I needed, and now I can let this go. I can know this of God. I can know this as God, and I can be an allowance for it to move out of my field so that I can see the truth of who and what I am. So
Yeah.
that,
Well, that's powerful, honestly. I couldn't even imagine an experience like that, and to also, I mean, it's totally understandable to take an experience or a trauma and not know how to deal with it during a time. And I know I've had that myself, and therefore we almost just naturally, or I don't know if that's the correct word, but like have to put it down or move it to the side because we just don't have the tools. We weren't equipped to maybe
yeah,
deal with it at the time, or deal with what we or how we perceive it would affect us if we were to acknowledge it in a way, if that makes
yeah,
sense. And I mean, to be able to look at any of our traumas, any of the things that have happened to us really clearly, and sit with them, and really address them, and move them both in the physical and energetic body, and just in our own, thoughts, all of it's a courageous act, and it's never easy. And I'm sure that isn't easy. And, but I am always so impressed and proud of how you deal with all of
oh,
your things, because you're a model for me, honestly, on how to address so many of these things, and you do it so gracefully, and you end up, always helping others with it, which is incredible. You learn, okay, I have this thing and I am dealing with it now, and now I know how to work with it with others, and that's so incredible. That's something, I'm always admired about you. And yeah, I don't know, that's awesome.
oh, I
And
love you.
I love you too, man. But no, it's true. And it's I know, just in general, you have a lot going on, and so this, working with some of these, like you said, both just energies of the physical and in the body, and re-knowing such a, it's funny, it's such a natural, and our bodies are such a, like, concrete part of our existence, and yet we don't understand them in so many ways, and we
No.
don't understand how we trap energies and memories and ideas into them. It's wild.
Yeah, it really is. And thanks for that. That was really nice. And I feel like, I was working with another client today, and we were talking about how, sometimes we just say yes to challenging things for whatever reason, and I know, like, the first, like, 28 years of my life were like a lot of trauma, and I know I laugh about it. It's probably not funny, but it's a good coping mechanism. And I also really do feel like, when challenging things in my life happen, like, they are happening, there is an opportunity within each of those challenging things. And I feel like, if something that I've experienced, even if I hated it, because, I hated all those things. I did not love any of those things that happened. But looking back on everything, I can be an appreciation for all of it, because look at who I am now because of it. I'm fucking awesome. And I don't know that
Yeah,
I'd be
you
quite
are.
so awesome without, like, like, I'm sure there's an easier way, but that's not the route that I took. And that's okay. So now I invite gentleness, ease, and grace into my life at every turn. And I think I get it mostly.
No,
But
I get
yeah,
you.
yeah. But we're all still kind of bumping our butts around here trying to, like, figure stuff out, and, be open and say yes to all the things that need to come up, because I really feel like that's what you got to do. Like, when this whole house thing, it's still, it's a mess. But when you're remodeling something, you have to tear all the old stuff out and then clean it up before you can put in the new bathroom. And I feel like collectively, energetically, that's just kind of where we are. We're, like, in the process of ripping the old shit out, and it's just, oh, fuck.
No, I hear you. But the good news is, then you have a brand new tub to soak in, to
You
relax,
got
to
that right.
enjoy.
Yeah, I'm getting a big tub. You know, it was funny.
usually.
Vince was like, "It's all going to be done by the time I get home from deployment," and I'm like, "Or is it?" Like, because at this rate, I don't know, man. You might be remodeling the bathroom. Oh, jeez.
Oh, that's
So,
funny.
all right, tell me a little bit about, like, I've been talking for a while, so I know that you two have been feeling a little bit of the squeeze. So,
Mm.
how's it going over there?
Yeah. Um, I don't know. It's been weird. I don't know if it's anything like specific. It's just like a lot of feelings are just coming up, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
emotions, a lot of ideas coming to be moved. Um, and I think it's just like a shifting and a hibernation of sorts. And I've just felt exhausted, even when I get a good amount of sleep. And I'm still working through, but I feel like I'm doing better with frustrations and recognizing, like you're saying, anger and frustration is a part of the
Mm-hmm.
experience. And it's not fun when I have to deal with those, but also I know there's a learning opportunity in all of them. And when you're talking about peace, I mean, it's been a big topic for the guides teachings the last,
Mm-hmm.
3 months plus. And it is, what I've been feeling is just like what you're saying. We talk about peace on a grand scale, and I don't know if there's many of us who are like, no, don't have peace in Palestine and Israel. Like, no, don't do that. Like, no, we all want peace on these grand scales, right? We want peace in Ukraine. We don't want more war. And yet, in our everyday lives, we have so much conflict. And
Mm-hmm.
we don't recognize the conflict in every interaction and within ourselves as an aspect of warring. And that's not to make conflict in ourselves more dramatic, but kind of to do the opposite, to shrink war down into this
Mm-hmm.
idea of just a conflict. And we have to individually attend to all the things that make us reactive, that push us right into conflict, that push
Mm-hmm.
us into unnecessary frustration and anger. And we have to attend to those at the physical level and our own personal level. Because if I can't, if I get too angry at my dog for like peeing on the floor for the 30th time, like I'm not going to be a good representative of like finding peace in a century long war such as like Israel and Palestine, right? Like you can't. It's we have to attend to it at the individual level first, always. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not saying I'm trying to be that. That's not my place in the world, but it is to say that if we as humanity want to move forward and want to choose peace, we have to know ourselves in peace first. That is the
Exactly.
cliche, but the truest thing, because at the end of the day, if everything's going well and then someone says something to you and all of a sudden you start a fight and that fight starts into a brawl, and then the brawl starts into a battle, and then a battle of war, like nothing has changed. And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard because we all have our buttons that get pushed. We all have our trigger points. We all have our past and ways people didn't treat us right, ways in which we felt alone or scared or angry and frustrated and didn't know what to do with it. And we need to deal with those individually before we can, overcome it collectively. And I
Mm-hmm.
do want to be someone who has peace in their relationships, who does have peace internally, and that means that this shit has to come up and I have to
Mm-hmm.
find ways to work with it. And it hasn't been easy and it's been exhausting often, but I feel like I'm slowly getting there, piece by
Yeah.
piece, no pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that's like really in alignment, I think, with what I'm experiencing and what I'm finding that others are experiencing. And I like what you're talking about, like triggers. I have this client who, she's a psychiatrist, psychologist by trade. And, we've been talking a lot about triggers because guess what? Everybody's getting triggered right now. And she's like, like your buttons are your responsibility to file down. And I'm like, I really like that a lot, right? When you file the button down, there's nothing to push. And And I really do feel like all this stuff that's coming up is really like the filing down of the buttons. And I got this really fun visual the other day of the buttons actually kind of like coming out and being replaced with this like shiny, smooth like finish, you know?
Ooh, please, I'll take that.
Yeah, so but the process of filing down and removing the buttons is kind of uncomfortable, just like remodeling the bathroom, you know? Like, so, oh, good job. You're at the end of your gallon for the day?
Oh no, I can't drink this in a day. I'll be up peeing all night.
Oh, oh.
But no, and I'm going back to my parents' house, my family's house for the holidays, and I'll be there for about a week. And I mean, they are the top tier, 10 out of 10 Michael Jordan of pushing my buttons. So,
Yeah.
so I know that there will be growth there and opportunities there to learn, but also I'm curious to see, hopefully I have moved to a place where I can, not let them push my buttons in the old way and realize, that I don't have to align to the fears they have. I don't have to align to the frustration they all carry, because I grew up in a home where like fear and frustration were like the always, that's how
Sure,
it
yeah.
was always. That's, you know, day after day. And that's kind of how I've known myself in those two energies for a long time. And thought that's what it meant to like be alive. And
Right.
so it's going to be interesting going back there and facing those, and hopefully bringing love and peace to all the situations and myself. And a lot of it has been realizing like, hey, I can get frustrated in these situations, but it's not helping me. And if it's not
Right.
helping me, then why am I doing it? And sometimes it isn't like not unhelpful, if that makes sense. Like if the dog
Sure.
pees on the floor for the 50th time and she knows better, like, yeah, it might be a little helpful for me to get frustrated and like let her know like, hey, we're done with this crap, right? But if she's just sniffing around too much and I get overly frustrated and start like yanking her chain or whatever, like that's not helpful. And
Right.
so there is ways in which we can work with these energies and understand why is it coming up, how is it beneficial, when is it really not beneficial, and then we can start to accept it in ourselves as well and say, okay, I understand why this is coming up now, I understand how this is shaping out. Sometimes it's okay to be frustrated with this person because they shouldn't have said something like this, and that's and sometimes it's not okay to be frustrated just because you're tired and they're being a little annoying today. So it is about relearning boundaries in a way of self and others.
Yeah. You know, my dogs, for some reason, have been having a ton of accidents since I got home from Costa Rica. Like, super unlike both of them. But, like, every day
Mm.
somebody's, like, pooping on the floor.
Oh
Like, what is
no.
going on? So I don't know what's going on with that, but I can appreciate, like, where you're coming from. But, these guys, at this point, feel like they're only really doing it if it's, like, an emergency. I don't know. Whatever. Maybe I'm just justifying bad behavior. But,
My old
um,
dog used to poop on the floor whenever we left for a long time because he to like show us he was mad. He'd like poop on the floor,
oh,
like
well, then
screw
they're
you
really
guys or
mad.
something.
It's just we clean up a lot of dog poop. Why was I talking about that? I don't know. Oh, I know. So, I do think that, and I feel like a lot of times in the spiritual community too, we do kind of sometimes encourage a glossing over or like, oh no, don't worry about that. But I think that, especially right now, because it feels super supported, like being in the moment of awareness of whatever the emotion is, whether it's something we deem good, bad, or indifferent, like, because that's part of the challenge here is the actual judgment around it. And,
Yeah.
I feel like that's another example of how we war with ourselves. And so when we allow those things to come up and we greet them or meet them with compassion, that allows us to shift from that frequency of war into that frequency of peace within and for ourselves. And I think, as we continue to be in the space of allowance for that, that kind of automatically just helps the buttons kind of wear down. And then I think we do find that things trigger us less because our relationship with it shifts, like instead of gripping onto everything so tightly. That's another thing I've been seeing is like, for some reason, when I see people's solar plexuses plexuses, plexi. I don't know the plural for that. Whatever. The the middle one. I always see it like this. Like it's a bunch of like hands like grabbing onto stuff, and like that's what people's solar plexus do whatever. And so the practice for a lot of it, especially when we get what we consider to be like the undesirable emotions, instead of gripping onto why they're right or wrong or we should or shouldn't feel them, we allow ourselves the space to kind of relax the grip onto them, which allows the emotions to move through a little faster and easier. So
Yeah.
it's cool how it kind of works, you know? And I think that when we look at it like that, it really helps to make all of the cruddy hard stuff a lot more I don't know, easily digestible, right? Like it makes it easier to be like, oh, you know, I actually see the truth of this, right? Like it's not that I'm having uncontrollable emotions, like maybe I am, but it's less about that and more about my relationship with them and my judgment around them. And as I soften that, the emotions themselves also soften.
Yeah.
So,
That's been a big part of it for me is also the judgment around it, and a puppy, comes with a lot of frustrations naturally, and some
sure
I
does.
added to by being tired and, just going through or having a lot going on and all of that. But I found it really hard at the beginning, especially because of the judgments I had around this. Like, oh, I can't be
Mm-hmm.
angry ever. I can't be frustrated ever.
Yeah.
I was just at this retreat and, I was just with all my friends and I was feeling so great. And, I can't come back down and be this miser, And I had to release a lot of the judgments around this and realize it was a new way to learn. And it's not always going to be easy to learn. And it's going to
Mm-hmm.
kick up some old stuff and old stuff that we might not want to be, to have or to be experiencing all the time. But we can't judge ourselves because that's not what God does. Like, the
Right.
judgment is always the personality self. And it just it added to the frustration and
Mm-hmm.
made the experience harder rather than easier and so
Yeah.
a lot of it has been moving the judgment around these emotions, the exhaustion, the frustration, and just some of the other ways I've been experiencing life. And as I move the judgments, it becomes, like you're saying, more of a flow, and
Mm-hmm.
things become easier and they move quicker. Uh, but it's still not always easy because
Yeah.
judgment is still an act of conflict, an act of war as well. And to move to peace
Mm-hmm.
is to let go of judgment because we can't
Mm-hmm.
hold judgment and be in peace.
Right. Yeah. It's yeah. Nailed it. Very well put. But yeah, I very much have also been seeing the judgment as an act of war on myself or somebody else. And I like, interestingly, that seems to really help, because then I say,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I want to soften that. I want to go back to and this was one of the things the guides talked about in Costa Rica as well. And I feel like when we're doing healing work or energy work, I feel like that's the focus all the time, right? Is to go to the seed of the space where that belief or idea or energy started, you know? And I feel like for a lot of us, we're like kind of digging our way into that, which is why a lot of this feels so big and heavy and, sometimes overwhelming and shadowy, like a dark, shadowy figure lurking in the dense fog, like, or at least that's what it's felt like to me. And it's kind of like I'm like, oh, hi there. You want to come in for some tea? Like, let's have a chat. Let's see what's going on here and see if we can't like bring you into the light. And I know that helps me take myself a little less seriously. Like,
Yeah, and that's making me think of a channeling I did a few weeks back where they talked about we think of darkness and light as a spectrum, and we
mm-hmm,
really like oh the darkness is so bad, and the further you get down the spectrum, all terrible, and light oh so good all the way back.
mm-hmm,
But like what we think of as a spectrum is actually a circle, and it's a
mm,
circle of darkness and light, and all that is of the circle is infinite, and there's infinite points in which you can go out in any direction, and it's all of God, and it's all of source, and it's all an expression. And that of light doesn't actually look down on that in darkness. It doesn't reject it or try and fight it. In fact, it's the opposite. It recognizes it as of God, but it just chooses, no, I don't have to go down there. I don't want to have that experience, or no, thank you. It's as simple as that. And that to me was really interesting, because we often still, our pop culture thinks of, oh, it's the story of darkness versus light, right? It's this battle always.
Yeah,
And
it's not a versus.
yeah, no, it's a recognition, and that doesn't mean we have to go and be best friends with it, but it means we still know it as an experience, as an expression of God, one that can be had if you wanted to choose it, or one that doesn't need to be had if you don't want to. But there's no, and the feeling of it was, there's just no, like, not even the slightest looking down on anything on the darkness side of the circle or spectrum, and it's, this
Yeah.
line is not the, them converging and battling. It's the circle of all encompassing.
Yeah. Um, I like that kind of visual there. Yeah, it's not a versus, it's an and. It's we're lifting every component to compassion. So again, like it's going back to the idea of fear or separation or war, and again, not a versus, but peace. I guess the idea of peace enfolds, right? I don't know. I feel like it's like not trying to fight the idea of war, but it picks it up and it gives it a hug, and then war just kind of like turns into peace, right? like I don't know. It probably doesn't make any sense, but that's fine.
Yeah. No, I get you. It's, peace, yeah, it doesn't have to fight for itself, right? Like, peace doesn't have
Right.
to overcome the idea of war. It doesn't have to beat the idea of war. It actually just has to look at war and let war, like, experience it, and then be like, oh, okay, like, why am I doing this thing? Why am I doing war when now I know what the experience of peace is like? Like, what is the point, right? And that's what it means
Yeah.
of, the light not having to go back to the darkness, because why would it, And it's just a choice at the end of the day. And there are creepy crawlies that like the darkness and go live there, and that's their expression, and they have a joyous time, and, that's totally fine. And then there are times when, like, humanity's choosing to move to the light, to move away from war, to move away from that experience of darkness, because we don't need it anymore. And so it's a shifting. It's not a battle. It's not a destruction. It's not an overtaking. It's just a
Yeah, and
movement.
overcoming. Yeah. Yeah, it feels like an allowance of lifting. Like, it's interesting because as you were kind of talking about that, one of the fun things since we've gotten back from Costa Rica with the guides working on our senses is I'm getting a lot more visuals than I ever have. Which has been kind of clunky when I'm
Cool.
like in session with people because I'm like seeing stuff. I'm like, I don't know how to describe this. This is weird. I don't know what this is, but it's really cool that I'm having this experience, And now I forgot whatever the image was that I just got, but it felt really nice, and I like it feels really hopeful, and it feels really a whole lot like, bringing the allowance of the lifting, like me kind of diving into all these things that are coming up doesn't change the fact that these things happened, but it does change how I view them, how I judge them, how I hold them, how I allow them to interact in my physical and energetic bodies. And it lifts everything, like it lifts it. And that's really cool that we can do that. like, yay, go team. So, with that, what do you say we pull a card?
Let's do it.
Okay. Oh, you yawned. You're going to make me yawn. Okay.
I'm using
I
a
think I went
different
back to
deck
my...
this time. Crystal
Ooh.
deck. Yeah, the
Love
crystal
that.
mandala deck.
So, I pulled out... I haven't actually pulled a card in like a hot minute. I don't think I pulled a card since we were in like Maui. I'm not sure why it's been so long. Did we do
Well,
a
we did
podcast since we got back
after
from that?
Yeah.
All right, then I pulled a card then, but that was, I guess, the last time. All right, what are we asking? Okay, something about like the embodiment of peace, right? Because that's kind of what we're talking about.
We
Although
can
we
do
know the
that.
answer, but
How do we find more peace in our lives?
what do I need to know about peace? What do we need to know about peace in our lives at this time? All right,
Works
I'm
for
gonna
me.
I'm gonna start because it's been long enough since we've
Go
done
for
this.
it. I
Who
believe in
knows
you.
who? What's that?
I said go for it. I'm all
Okay.
for it.
Okay. So. Well, it's easy. Focus.
It's a cool
So
card.
it is, and you know what? It kind of reminds me of living here in Washington. Although I think the sun's out a little more here than it is here right now. So, but it's interesting. So with this, this is a sacred journey marker, and anytime these come up, these are usually tied to like soul lessons and journeys, and like the big stuff. So the question was around peace. So what do we need to know around peace? Bring your awareness and focus into peace. Everything that isn't peace will then come up to be addressed, to be held lightly, and to be let go, so that that focus in peace. And what I kind of see with this is, as we bring the focus, where your focus goes, your energy flows, and the focus on peace allows it to ripple out into all of the areas that are wanting to be lifted to the light. And, it's interesting the way that I've kind of been seeing it, and what's coming in now here is kind of like when I'm working with people's energy centers and we're going like, sometimes it feels like we're going really deep in to address some like old stuck stuff. And what we've been doing lately is sending in like a flood of this like love energy. And as we flood this love energy in, it's allowing whatever the distortion is to just kind of lift to the surface. And so then it becomes easy to just kind of float out instead of like going and digging around and trying yanking something out. That's really aggressive. So if we're bringing it in, the whole idea is to operate from the space of peace. It's much gentler to send in a flood of love energy and allow this stuff to float up. So that's what this focus card makes me think of. But for your entertainment, I will also read it.
Yes, entertain us.
Okay. It is time to draw your energies inward, which is actually like a perfectly appropriate, because I've been getting the message a lot too about hibernation for all of us. It's the time of year moving into the winter, like the solstice. At the time of us recording this, the winter solstice is tomorrow. So we're entering into winter, which traditionally is a time to hibernate. That doesn't mean we're not doing anything, but what that does mean is it's time to go inward and be reflective. And like think about the bear getting ready to like settle into the den. It's like digging the spot that it's going to lay in over the winter.
Wait, so
And
winter
then
hasn't even started yet? Officially?
December 21st. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I thought hibernation was about to be over soon. We got a whole
No,
3
dude.
months left. Oh my goodness.
Now, with that said, I do feel like something's going to shift, like when the solstice comes in. But I don't think that's going to negate the need to continue to dive deep. I feel like we're going to dive deep for probably at least into, February-ish, probably really March. But the beauty is that, like there's so much that comes from the hibernation. Like it's not our favorite thing to do. But, think about the spring that comes on the other side of that. There's like the seed that's planted, and then there's the quickening of the seed, and then there's the sprout that shoots up, and, then you have this lovely tree that bears fruit. So, it's just, I don't know, it's part of it.
Just
Okay,
want to
anyway,
get some rest, man.
I just want to take a nap. I'm so tired. So it goes on to say, let go of all things that are let me try this again. Superfluous and unnecessary at this time. I feel like that word was superfluous, just so you know. All right,
I like
focus
that
your
word.
attention on it's a good word, but focus your attention on the job ahead. Do what is in front of you, no matter how small the task. Clear focus is required. Be mindful to stay in the present. Avoid looking back or too far forward, for it is only in staying in the true present, the now, that the power residing in this sacred journey marker can be used for the benefit of all. So basically, be an allowance and attend to whatever is on your plate at any given time. Your path is marked with the need to regroup and remind yourself of your goal. Then stay in the present time and do what is directly in front of you. Only one small, focused step at a time will place you at your destination. So, how about that?
That was good, but not sexy.
Not what I wanted. I
Wanted a
feel like I've
card
been
that
delivering that a
says,
lot.
you're gonna wake up tomorrow fully rested and energetic and ready to do all the shit. And no,
And full of
it's not.
peace and no war.
All right, all right. My turn. Same question.
Okay.
What should we know for peace? To embody peace, to feel peace, to have peace in our lives. Whoa, upside down. Number 33. Ascended Master Helios and Citrine is the stone. Your time to shine. Ooh, cool card. Your time to shine. This is a really interesting card to get in this situation. I'm curious what it means.
Yeah, it's interesting because I can't see it really well, but it feels like a lot of fire energy to me, which is action, which is actually like the opposite of hibernation.
Yeah. Well,
Huh.
I'm also seeing a lot of the yellow, so
Okay.
a lot of yellows and orange could be sacral and solar plexus too.
Yeah. Is there
But
red
yeah,
in
a
it?
lot of there is some red, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So I don't know. Let's take a look. We'll see what we see. We'll see what we see. Okay. We bring you the blessing of your time to shine. On the divine path, you gain empowerment through surrender and alignment with divine consciousness greater than your own. As you choose to surrender into higher consciousness through prayer and intention, you are held in a field of divine protection. You also gain strength, wisdom, and understanding. You release fear and gain love's power. You become increasingly radiant, discover more of your own identity. At some point on your path, while this is always happening for you on the inner planes, you'll be ready to perform a similar function on the outer planes in the world of forms. This is when you'll be asked to bravely shine your light to help those in need, perhaps lost in darkness or some sort in the physical world. I'll just read briefly a little bit more. It's your time to shine. Do not stand alone, and yet you will at times feel as though you are a lone lighthouse shining truth for those who get lost in the stormy seas of darkness, who need help to find their way safely to shore. You cannot fulfill this spiritual task if you lift your lighthouse self off the rocks and go in search of a sunny day. For the lighthouse to be able to assist those in need, it must be present and luminous within the darkness. You must trust that during this time you have enough light within your heart from your own powerful interconnection to the divine light of love to sustain you as you shine brightly through the night. If you sense that there is much pain and suffering around you, do not become afraid. You are fulfilling a spiritual task to help those who are lost. You are the lighthouse shining in the darkness. That's interesting.
That is. And you know what? As you were kind of like reading the description of it, it felt so much more in alignment with kind of the going within and allowing the stuff to kind of work, the addressing the shadow, like talking about the light, well, to be the lighthouse. That's best at night. Like,
Yeah. And I
interesting.
feel like we've both been getting, definitely I have, and I think you have as well, getting a lot of messages about like how this is a time to move forward, to be the path setters and to tread the path. And we've even gotten the imagery of like being on a ship in stormy seas
Yeah.
and then being able to
We're all
guide
seasick.
those who are on the next, yeah, to guide those who are on the next ships that are coming and say, no, it's okay. You're going to get through this. And so it's funny that image is coming up. And it almost felt like for me, as I was reading this is where that hibernation is leading, like where the path kind of
Yep.
goes and how and where we come out of it. And so, you know, I think that was interesting. That was kind of the feeling I was getting around that. What do you think?
Yeah, it feels very similar to me too. Like it definitely feels hopeful. Like between yours and the one that I drew, it feels really hopeful. It feels like hey, you know what? There really is Like, yeah, you're kind of hunkering down now, and there really is something beautifully magnificent waiting for you on the other side of that. And it's okay to be here where you are now. It felt very permissive and supportive. Like, I feel a lot of like kind of love support energy coming in around it too. And you know, it's funny, like this bracelet that I've been wearing for the last several years, it says it's Lighthouse. I got it engraved so I can remember. Because that's the whole
Oh,
idea, right? Like,
that's
yeah,
cool. I like that.
we want to hold steady the light and be the lighthouse. I actually have a tattoo on my arm that says hold steady the light, just in case I ever forget that that's what I'm trying to do. So,
What was that
how
I'm
about
doing
that?
again? Hold steady the
Oh,
light. Oh, okay,
right.
I
Hold
got it.
steady
There
the
we
light.
go.
That's right. That's what I wanted. Well, you know, and it's a nice reminder when things get stormy and it gets dark outside, you know, like, hey, it's okay that it's dark and it's okay that, you know, you're struggling a little
Yeah.
bit because really you've got that light within you. And if you hold steady that light, then whatever comes is going to be okay. You know, like you got
Yeah.
100%
Yeah, that
success rate.
reminder we have the power. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's already in us. We're already capable, and you know, we're in the night now, and in the night that's when the light can start to flicker on and then shine and then, you know, help guide others. And
Yeah. You know, that's interesting too, because as we're kind of going through this, like, I know that I've seen us like on a boat and we're kind of like navigating these rough waters. And I just realized, like, oh, you know what? We're on the boat. We are the boat. We're the water and we're the lighthouse. Oh, yeah. Like,
funny how that
great.
all works, isn't it?
Funny how that all works. Yeah, that feels very much related to the idea of like, oh, it's not just a system. It's like a system in general. Oh, right. Oh yeah, we're working at like all these levels at once, and we're doing a lot of really great work. So I guess what I would like to say then is, if you feel shitty, if you feel like you're struggling, if you're feeling kind of yucky, if you're seeing yucky things that you don't like about yourself or someone else, it's okay. Like, it's
Yeah.
all good because you're right on track. You're right on time. You're doing a good job, and in fact, you're probably doing a hell of a lot better than you think you are. You
Yes.
know.
And give yourself grace, give yourself peace as much as you can, give yourself ease and rest. And, you know, you deserve to be taken care of and embody the light just as much as anyone else, even with all the icky stuff that comes up, and remembering that helps too.
Yeah. And you know, icky is just an idea, you know. Like that's one of the things that I'm definitely finding myself an appreciation of is like, oh, you know what? These things that I used to judge as shameful or bad or embarrassing or whatever. Oh, that's not mine.
Yeah.
I don't have to have that.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. And hold steady the light.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
with that, is there anything else that we need to share?
I got nothing.
Okay. Well, hey, if, as always, if you love our podcast, share it with your friends, share it with your family. You can even share it with your relatives if you like.
Just not my relatives.
Just not talk. Yeah, because we definitely talked about them today. No, just kidding. He loves you. But as always, like, comment, subscribe. If you've got anything that you would love to hear us chat about or have any questions or whatever, we would love to know that. And that's all I got.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks for joining me, Carly. It's been fun.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll have to put our next one on the calendar so we don't take 100 years to do it. That was my fault. So thanks, everybody, for your patience.
All right, peace, everyone.
Bye, guys.